Hello, I'm Ruth, and welcome back to This Is How We Roll. This week's episode is called Treat People Like People. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. This episode isn't really going to have much information as far as life hacks and things you didn't know. But I think what we're going to talk about in this episode is a really important conversation for people to be having. And I hope that this episode sparks more conversations like this in the future. This episode is really about empathy and what beautiful fruit can come from the seed of empathy. So I don't know if you guys picked up on this from my interview with Joe last week, but him and I are actual friends in real life. When he came over, we were just chilling and talking. He did the interview with me, then we were talking about projects we're working on, and some we might be working on together. At one point, we got onto this really philosophical conversation about people and the way that they seem to be a lot of the time. We were talking about how it seems like there's a tendency for a lot of apathy in the world. And then from there, we got onto a conversation about how our friendship came to be. We kind of concluded that it started with empathy and then grew into what it is now, a strong friendship. There was one point in the conversation where I was saying how I wish people could treat others, and then I couldn't look for the word, and I was like, I don't know how to say it. And then he just kind of jumps in and goes, you wish people would treat people like people? And I was just like, yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. After he said that, I kind of had this moment where I was thinking about how unlikely our friendship is. I was kind of talking it through with him, and I was like, literally the only reason why we're friends is because you approached me the night that we met. It was at a school dance, and it was the first one of the year. I personally never would have actively approached him, seeing as he's very tall and very strong and very athletic. So it never naturally occurred to me that we'd be really good friends because I'm small, not very strong, and disabled. And in all honesty, I actually kind of expected that he would be really stuck on himself and think he was the best person who ever existed. As it turns out, we ended up locking eyes for a second. You know how when you're just staring off into space or zoning out, sometimes you accidentally catch someone's line of sight. And after that, he walked over to me, and we started talking. And as it turns out, everything I thought about him was completely false. Yes, he is unmistakably very tall, very strong, and very athletic, but he was actually really kind and a little shy. I also think that I wasn't exactly who he was expecting me to be when we started talking. So the two of us were just talking for a little bit, and then he introduced me to some of his friends, and I think the girl who he liked at the time. As it turns out, we really had a lot in common. I'm sure that when he came over to me, he was just expecting to say hi and talk for a little bit, but I don't think either of us were really expecting that one conversation to turn into the friendship that we have today. I know it's an age-old adage, but it just goes to show and prove, don't judge a book by its cover. So before we left the dance that night, we ended up switching Instagram usernames. And a couple of days later, I texted him. Our first conversations were just kind of me asking him about the things that he likes and about football. I was really just interested in getting a perspective that I'd never had before on what it's like to be athletic. I was really interested in getting to know what it's like to be a football player, what it feels like to be on the field, and how it feels to win or lose a game. He also seemed to want to get a different perspective on what it's like to be disabled, because he would ask me about my life and the things I did and what I like to to do. And as we talked more, he would ask me about my condition and how it affected me, and we would talk about physical therapy. Even to this day, we're still always perspective switching in order to be there for each other, in order to help each other, and even to celebrate together. For example, when it comes to supporting each other, I don't know what it's like to have diabetes, but I can listen and understand the things that he's telling me in order to envision what it might be like, so I can help support him and be a good friend to him when he's going through any struggles that are related to that. And when it comes to things like celebrating together, if I tell him about a really cool tool I found that allows me to pick things up off the ground, he can imagine what that might be like. Obviously, to him, picking things up is probably such a small thing, but he's able to imagine what it's like not to have that ability, and then what it might be like to get that ability. So we can celebrate together and congratulate each other on each other's accomplishments. This is a kind of funny example from last weekend, where I was actually wanting his perspective. So I needed some advice on my love life, and I was just like, Joe, this is the situation I'm in. Is this guy trying to hurt me or not? And as it turned out, the answer was not, and I was just being silly. But I just wanted to share that with you to give you some perspective on how switching perspectives and being empathic can both help you, yourself, and in certain situations it can help your friend or just whoever you're being empathic with. If there's one thing I hope that you take away from me sharing the story of my friendship, it's the power of empathy. I hope that you're encouraged to go out into the world and use empathy, perhaps in a way that you never have before. Whatever that is, maybe it's talking to someone you never thought you would. Maybe it's trying to see someone else's side in an argument, or just imagining what it's like to have someone else's life. Or maybe it's just being a little bit more open-minded the next time someone comes up to talk to you. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, you guys. That's it for this episode. Until next time, remember, we're all different, so just roll with it.